I'm pretty sure if you've been on the internet for any span of time, you've probably at least heard of a certain game by the name of Fortnite. Fortnite's rapid rise to fame, or infamy depending on your point of view, is one that's been well documented on many other channels. But its success worked as a double-edged sword, effectively killing off another lesser-known but pretty well-received game by the name of Paragon. Paragon was fairly unique at the time for taking the popular MOBA gameplay format and applying a third-person shooter spin on it, effectively making the game a hybrid between the two genres. However, while Paragon was doing well enough in terms of financials, it wasn't exactly making blockbuster amounts of money compared to what its younger brother Fortnite was doing for the company. So Paragon was taken offline for good by Epic Games. But one thing that really nobody expected was, while the community was still actively mourning Paragon's demise, Epic Games released nearly all of the Paragon game assets to the general public, free of charge, for anyone that wanted to use them in any Unreal-powered game. All use, commercial and non-commercial, allowed. This was something I was very personally surprised by. I can't think of very many instances off the top of my head where a company has freely distributed game assets to the community and even added in a clause expressly allowing for commercial use of games made using those assets. Legally speaking, that is your proverbial needle in a haystack. And as you might imagine, a decent number of community members began working on their own fan games immediately. However, to the best of my knowledge, as of now, Fault is the first and currently only commercially released successor to Paragon to have made it beyond the prototyping stage and onto a platform like Steam. So the question is, how good is the end result? I think the first thing that is made pretty clear when looking at Fault is that the game, even on the surface level, definitely is not trying to be a one-for-one clone of Paragon, and for a number of reasons I think that's a very good thing. Sure, there definitely are the obviously murky legal and ethical snares in regards to straight-up cloning an existing game, albeit one that's technically no longer around, but there is the secondary motivation in that no matter what you do, people will always be comparing your product to what came before. And that's never a fair comparison. How can a game scramble together over the course of a year or two, using a hodgepodge of free assets, compared to a well-received live service game from a company that has had far more experience and resources at its disposal? While ideally I think the best possible outcome would be just to create your own game from scratch with your own assets, that way you have total control over the look and feel of your game, rather than confine your creative opportunities by playing with someone else's tools. Fault has instead tried to adhere to a sort of middle ground approach. A lot of the usual approachable third-person shooter-esque gameplay has been dialed back significantly this time around, in favor of a redoubled focus on the more MOBA-driven mechanics. Now, I would be a little bit more sympathetic if I felt these made the game more enjoyable to the average player, but oh no, dear lord no. There is very little I can say about any of the quote-unquote new additions that would be remotely positive in nature. So yes, this is not going to be a majority positive review, so for those of you hoping for just glowing praise of this game, you're going to be significantly disappointed, I think. Now let's talk about the actual gameplay, shall we? How fun is the core gameplay loop? Because gameplay is where it really matters. It's, I would say, fine. There's really nothing exceptional on display here. It's your generic bog-standard MOBA battlefield, with the two teams having exceptionally large spawn points on either side of the map, with the rest of the map in between being split down the middle into either friendly or enemy territory. Kind of your standard, fairly long, narrow, football field-like structure. The attacks, whether you're attacking your typical minor AI enemy minions, or when attacking an enemy hero, are pretty basic. While some of the visual effects look decent, the attacks themselves don't have any sense of impact. When you attack someone, there's very little satisfaction derived from doing so. Nothing feels meaty, which is a bit of a problem. I'm not really someone who's much of an esports viewer or player. It's not my cup of tea, so to speak, but I have seen enough League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm being played by their respective pro leagues that I understand why hundreds of thousands or sometimes even millions of people around the world tune into some of these events. When a Heroes of the Storm team make an effective push and wipe out two enemy heroes in one tower in a single coordinated strike, I get the small secondhand adrenaline rush. When I eliminate an enemy hero, get an elimination assist, or take down a tower in this game, I don't really feel anything, really. I only feel a small sense of relief, to be honest, in that at least that's one obstacle down, allowing me one step closer towards being able to end this game. Eliminating enemy minions and heroes will earn you in-game money, which you can spend on upgrading your hero for the duration of that match. However, the item shop, unlike the one seen in most MOBAs, is a complete visual mess. This is like a classic lesson for anyone making their own game. When you're working on the user interface, your first priority should always be to convey as much relevant information to the user as possible, while taking up the bare minimum amount of screen space. Use your space effectively. Don't present a scrambled mess that bombards the player with an abundance of unnecessary information. It's okay to present them with a lot of different options or objects, but if you're not going to make it clear what these options are there for, or what they do, you're not doing your job very well as a developer. A player should not need an instruction manual or the help of a YouTube Let's Player to navigate your game's character upgrade screen. Now, it's not all bad. The actual items here on display have pretty decent descriptions. You have your basic health increase or stamina increase items, as well as other items that similarly increase the effectiveness of some of your other attributes. But none of them have that sense of gameplay altering power that makes you feel like you made any substantial difference by spending your money on said items. One of the biggest, but by no means only, sins this game commits is how crazy its pay-to-play system is. You should all know by now that I'm not opposed to some microtransactions in multiplayer games, especially if those games are free to play. I think it's fair to say that I probably spent close to $100, if not more, on Team Fortress 2 cosmetics over the past decade. Basically, probably around $10 a year, which isn't really that bad when you think about it over a long stretch of time, considering I've gotten thousands of hours of value out of it. But the problem here is that Vault is not a free-to-play game, it's a $20 paid retail game. And the microtransactions here just aren't cosmetic in nature. You have literal playable hero characters being gated behind a paywall, which is just insane. MOBA-esque games like Heroes of the Storm do pay gate the majority of their playable characters, but again, those games are free to play and aren't unreasonably unfair with their monetization practices. Fault here, though, I don't think anyone could declare this to be a reasonably fair system for a paid $20 game. One thing that could have made this game indefinitely better, or at the very least indefinitely more tolerable, would be adding in a private match mode where the player could play a private game with the AI, or alternatively, even team up with other players to practice against the AI. Nearly all mainstream MOBAs, and in general most first or third-person shooter games in general, have some option to play with the AI while queuing for an online match. Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, Dota 2, Team Fortress 2, Rainbow Six Siege, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, each and every one of them, to the best of my knowledge, have some variation of a practice match with bots option. Overwatch and TF2 in specific handle this really well. While you're waiting for the system to find you a competitive or casual match, you can jump into a community server or practice range to hone your skills, or just hang out in a virtual space while you wait to enter your more serious match. By the way, just for the record, that was something Blizzard added into Overwatch before Valve later retroactively added that into TF2. By the way, in doing so, also making it one of the few and most notable instances where Valve ripped off Overwatch instead of Blizzard ripping off TF2. I just say that because I know a lot of diehard TF2 fans love pissing on Blizzard for mimicking TF2 concepts in Overwatch, but let's face it, Valve is no stranger to flagrantly stealing stuff either. Also, and this is definitely more of a secondary concern, but the community is insanely toxic. I'm not usually overbothered by toxicity in a game. I'm not one of those people that you'll see whining to developers begging for excessive moderation. But this game's community is one of the worst I've seen in recent years, and that is saying something, believe me. I have read a lot of similar statements from other people who have tried their hand at playing this game, to the point that it seems pretty consistent, almost universal. And while to some degree I could see the argument that toxicity isn't really a core gameplay issue, keep in mind that this is an inherently multiplayer competitive team-based game. You cannot afford to have one of your teammates deciding to spend the majority of the game idling in order to angrily type rude things in the chat. If your team loses focus on the match due to infighting, there's usually no coming back from that in most cases. That's why there are usually systems in place to mitigate this and punish this behavior. Now, the reason why I suspect this hasn't been pursued by the developers is out of fear that it would further fragment the community and result in even longer queue times for matches. But the problem is, since I suspect a lot of people aren't actively playing this game due to its horribly unbalanced nature and outrageously toxic chat, the developers are even less inclined to fix those things now, since actually punishing such players or making new balance changes that dramatically overhaul the nature of the game may alienate some of those said players. Might prove to be the last overall nail in the game's coffin. So they're just incentivized to just leave it where it is, despite the fact that the game is a fucking mess. Maybe I'm wrong, and hopefully what I've espoused here is merely just my cynicism playing out. Wouldn't be the first time. Maybe the developers are hopelessly out of their league and drowning in issues left, right, and center, trying desperately to keep the game afloat. It wouldn't change the fact that the game's a mess, but I would take comfort in knowing that they are at least aware of the problems at hand, and eventually will make some attempt to correct them. I personally doubt it, but hey, it's possible. At the time of this video going live, the developers did recently launch their festive winter-themed limited-time seasonal event, Wintervale 2020. And no, I'm not pronouncing Winterville, that is Wintervale with a V-A-L-E at the end there. I don't know why they didn't just call it Winterville for once, because Winterville, since for one that just sounds like a better name for winter map. It may be a slightly more generic name, but it also sounds like one that requires less explanation. As a name, it just has that feeling of being that old meme of copying my homework, but change it just enough so the teacher doesn't notice. And to give just a quick synopsis of what this update brings with it, the answer is, yeah, not all that much. What a shock, I know. A game that has already proved itself to be a massive, misleading disappointment, releasing an update that proves to be almost identically likewise. A totally unexpected outcome, I know. As part of this update, one new hero was released, Rictor. And if I'm not pronouncing that right, fuck it, I don't care. To quote a short excerpt from the patch notes, Rictor is an offensive control tank that is most characterized by his pull ability. Pull heroes in MOBAs are a staple archetype that adds a tremendous tactical and mechanical element to MOBA gameplay, and Rictor will be the first to provide that for Fall. As a control tank, he has very limited mobility and a large hitbox, making him vulnerable to being picked out and eliminated. Sounds pretty cool, right? As someone who plays a fair amount of time playing tank roles in other games like Overwatch, which, despite itself being an FPS, still retains a lot of MOBA DNA at its core. I kind of like being that enormous team-carrying meat shield that anchors a team behind him. It's not a role for everyone, but for me it's a playstyle that I've gradually come to love. So this might be a character I would be interested in playing, but wait for it, there's a catch. Because this is Fall, and of course there is. The character, just like every new character the developers add sporadically to the game, is locked off only for players willing to open their wallets. And I know I've already gone on a bit about this game's bizarre monetization practices, but I feel it's worth elaborating on in a little bit more specific detail because it is that insane. It's that excessive I have to talk about it twice. If this was a free-to-play game, you wouldn't hear me complaining about it nearly to this degree. Because hey, if the entry point is free and the developers are continuing to make content for this live service game, I suppose to some degree we do have to bite the bullet and swallow some form of microtransaction, provided that microtransaction isn't too blatantly greedy in nature. But this game is $20, actually even $60, I forgot about that. I'm looking at the Steam page right now as I record this, and now the game is not worth $20, believe me. It is not worth $20. There's absolutely no possible justification in any reality for paying $20, let alone $40, literally double the initial already questionable $20 price tag, just to get access to 7 additional heroes. But wait for it, there's a second $20 DLC pack for 7 more heroes. So yeah, $60 for a game that is shit. You want to pay $60 for a piece of bullshit? Well, I mean, you could buy any Activision game, they'll do it, but this game is somehow even worse. The 2 $20 DLC packs, and that's not all. You do get a little bit more. Who doesn't love paid XP boosters? Because we remember those from Call of Duty, right? Those were always so popular with Call of Duty. That means they should go in this game and that game and everywhere. But the difference between Call of Duty and Fall, and I can't believe I'm actually siding with Call of Duty over anything else, but Call of Duty actually has some content to validate the excessive microtransactions. Now, I think Activision gets a bit carried away with how it handles microtransactions, but at least in Call of Duty you have some content, and there are players playing the game, so the game is staying live for roughly, at least a year. You're getting at least a year's worth of online value out of it. But here, what exactly are you getting? The game's dead. It takes anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to get into a game. And half the characters, when you jump into the game after you spent $20, half of the characters are completely unavailable because the game wants you to spend triple your initial asking price just to get access to all the content. But Dan, I can hear at least one of you angrily typing, they need this money to sustain development. Developers don't work for free after all, they're not a fucking charity. God knows I know it. So hold up, here's one little final economics lesson for you, specifically about budgeting, project management, and marketing, from someone who actually did a paid marketing internship and did some grant writing themselves. If your game requires a $20 asking price, not only that, but also the purchase of 2 additional DLC packs plus an extensive in-game cosmetic storefront in order to even break even with your overhead costs, it may just be possible, that you as a developer are setting yourself up for failure. Because that is the perfect storm of how to absolutely nuke your chances of ever succeeding straight into the ground. This is such a perfect storm of how to absolutely nuke your chances of ever succeeding straight into the ground that it's almost somewhat impressive in a reverse psychology kind of way. By the way, this is just a fun tidbit of info on the game itself, but did you know the game didn't even have enough community level support to propel its own crowdfunder on Indiegogo? Granted, it was aiming for an insanely high production goal of over $100,000, and ultimately got as far as $73,000, which itself is still pretty good for a crowdfunded game, but it begs the question why the bar was set so high to begin with. Maybe if it did reach its funding goals, it might have launched in a much better state and been made available at a far lower price, or maybe even just gone free to play, which I think might have actually been better and helped stabilize its dismal player base. But as with many games, we can always look back at what was and what could have been, but at the end of the day, we have to accept what is. And what this game is a mess that does not deserve a single dollar of your money. At least not now, and likely not ever. Not unless it makes some kind of majestic No Man's Sky level turnaround over the remainder of its current early access stage. And I think I can speak for everyone watching this video when I say I doubt it. At any rate, that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. I wasn't initially planning for this video to be as long as it is. I was hoping for this to be a relatively short 10-minute long brief look, but there was just so much to rip apart that I couldn't help attacking this with the ferocity Krampus would probably display towards those who find themselves on the naughty list. Rest assured, I did probably put more thought and effort into this 20-ish minute long video, as the developers did in developing said game. I really wanted to like this game, I'll be honest, but there's just nothing in here worth liking. And that's all there is to it. If you enjoyed this video or found it at all informative, I would really appreciate it if you took the time to give it a like, as clicking on the like button really does help promote my content within YouTube's various convoluted algorithms. And let me know what you think in the comments down below. I love talking to you guys as always, I really do. The back and forth interactions make this all a bit more interesting and rewarding as a content creator. Since at the end of the day, this is me talking to the microphone with my 2 beautiful elderly Himalayan cats for company. Well, apparently just one. The other one walked out. He got tired of my bullshit. Or maybe he got tired of false bullshit. In that case, I couldn't blame him. The other one's currently sitting behind me, staring at me, judging me like that Shadow of Mordor meme. If you want to see more videos like this one in the future, subscribing and clicking the bell to get notified of future uploads would really help you and me both. YouTube isn't always the best at notifying people otherwise. I'm hoping to end the year at around 1,100 subscribers, or currently about 1,070 now, so it's not looking super likely we'll hit it. But I take comfort in knowing that at least we won't be that far off. Every new subscription matters, so if you're the newest person, welcome on board. Know that your support definitely makes all the difference, and I appreciate you for, well, being you. I do have probably 1 or 2 last videos I'll be putting out next week before the year comes to an end. And thank God, because 2020, I won't miss you. I'm happy we're going our separate ways 2020, and I'm looking forward to hopefully 2021 being an upgraded model. But I just want to reiterate how grateful I am for your support this year in 2020. To have started the year with only 436 subscribers, and to ultimately end the year with a little under 1,100, there really are no words for it. There really aren't. All I can say is let's keep that momentum going up and going into 2021. My goal is to go from 1,000 subscribers to 3,000 subscribers, effectively tripling the channel's current size. It would be a big jump, I'm not gonna lie, but with a bit of luck it might be doable. I'm not going anywhere, I promise that, so I'm hoping you're not either. This is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, stay safe, and peace out.